You wake up each day believing your life makes sense, that your choices are logical, that your fears are justified, that the direction you're moving in is reasonable. You have a story for everything. Why you are the way you are, why certain paths were never taken, why some dreams quietly disappeared, why this life, even if it feels small, is acceptable. But what if the problem isn't your discipline, your motivation, or your circumstances? What if the problem is the story you are living inside? Every human being lives inside a narrative. Not a story written on paper, but one written in assumptions. Assumptions about what is possible, about who you are allowed to be, about what success looks like, about what failure means. And the most dangerous thing about this story is not that it exists, it's that you rarely question it. From a young age, you were taught how to explain yourself, why you behaved the way you did, why you wanted what you wanted, why certain things were not for people like you. These explanations were not neutral. They were shaped by parents, teachers, culture, religion, and fear. Slowly, a narrative formed. This is who I am. This is what I'm capable of. This is where I belong. And eventually, you stopped seeing it as a story. You started seeing it as truth. Plato understood this long before psychology had a name. In the allegory of the cave, prisoners mistake shadows for reality, not because they are foolish, but because shadows are all they have ever known. They do not feel imprisoned, they feel informed. Your story works the same way. It does not feel limiting. It feels realistic. At some point, the narrative becomes internal. You no longer hear it as rules or commands. You hear it as your own thoughts. I'm just not that kind of person. I should be grateful. That's unrealistic. It's too late now. I don't want to risk everything. Nietzsche warned that the most effective forms of control are moral ones, where obedience disguises itself as responsibility. By the time you notice the story, it no longer feels imposed. It feels like identity. And questioning it feels like questioning who you are. This is why change feels so threatening. Because changing your life doesn't just require new actions, it requires a new narrative. And that means admitting something deeply uncomfortable, that the story you've been living by might be incomplete, or worse, convenient. The story explains why you stay where you are. It explains why you tolerate dissatisfaction, why you avoid uncertainty, why you postpone difficult choices. It protects you from regret by lowering expectation. Machiavelli once observed that people will choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar freedom. Your story offers safety. In exchange, it quietly limits who you become. Notice how the story shapes your interpretation of emotions. Fear becomes being realistic. Avoidance becomes being patient. Resignation becomes maturity. Self-betrayal becomes being responsible. Language shifts, and when language shifts, thought follows. You stop saying, I'm afraid. You start saying, it's just not the right time. You stop saying, I want more. You start saying, this is fine. The story doesn't silence you. It teaches you how to silence yourself. Psychologists call this internalization, when external expectations become internal rules. You don't need to be watched. You don't need to be punished. You don't need permission. You regulate yourself. And the moment you consider stepping outside the narrative, something strange happens. You feel guilt, as if wanting something different is a betrayal, not of others, but of who you are supposed to be. This is where most people stop. Not because they can't change, but because rewriting the story comes with a cost. Responsibility. If the story is not fixed, if the limits were never absolute, then what you avoided was not impossible. It was optional. And that realization is terrifying. History is filled with people who never revolted because they were not physically oppressed. They were psychologically settled. They adapted. They normalized. They lowered expectations. The story did not crush them. It lulled them. And over time, they forgot that life could be authored instead of endured. The moment the story becomes visible, it begins to lose power. You start noticing your automatic explanations. You hear yourself justify things that feel empty. You catch yourself dismissing possibilities before exploring them. And slowly a question emerges. Is this true? Or is this just familiar? That question is dangerous because it creates distance between you and the narrative, and distance creates choice. Freedom does not mean chaos. It does not mean abandoning responsibility or burning everything down. It means authorship. It means realizing that many of the rules you obey are not laws. They are interpretations, and interpretations can be revised. You don't escape the story all at once. You loosen it, one assumption at a time, one inherited belief at a time, one "this is just who I am" at a time. And the process is slow, uncomfortable, lonely, but it is real. Here is the truth most people never confront. Your life is shaped less by what you want and more by the story you believe explains why you can't have it. The story does not decide who you become. It only decides who you become if you never question it. And the moment you do, the narrative begins to change.